Hello. Today I want to talk about Justin Trudeau's allegation that Indian IPS officers, Indian officials, Indian police officers were involved in the killing of a gangster in Canada who had been accused of killing some other gangster, and who, was killed because he was a fucking gangster. Now, why on earth would India, any Indian IPS officer, Indian police service officer, somebody who would by a kind of a law of gravitation, he would rise and rise. He would not want to be in a position in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, where he could not visit his daughter or his son, who would be the top surgeon in Seattle or in Frankfurt or something like that. This is, I come to that milieu, and I know that it's a nonsense. But I do know exactly why Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau's, the father of Justin Trudeau, had in fact encouraged Khalistani terrorism, but so had Jesse Helms. Why? Back in the 80s. Why? Because India had a defense treaty with the Soviet Union, and you had Afghanistan, where the Soviet troops are in Afghanistan, and the West was supporting the Mujahideen, and they're right to do so. They're right to do so because the Kalkis were shit. In fact, the reason that the Soviets invaded was to kill the Kalki extremists and bring in the Parchamis, but the Parchamis were also Parchamis didn't have any really plan for the country. It was shit. Okay. But India at the time was on the other side of the Cold War. Now, either there is no Cold War, either there's a walkover for China as the preeminent power in the world island, which is Eurasia, and it appears Zelensky is saying that, we depend on arms shipments. We're not actually winning this on our own. We're getting a lot of money and arms shipments, but our internal regime is collapsing because of corruption, and this is good news for China. Now, what China wants is for Taiwan to come back into the fold, and we don't know what will happen in 2024 in the elections. It may be that they will come back into the fold, because they look at Ukraine, and Ukraine had nuclear weapons. It's got a big population. They had nuclear weapons. They gave them up because the Americans said, we'll guarantee independence. The British did as well. Now, the British have put in a lot of money. They've given billions, but let's face it, Britain can't. It's not a big country. There's very little limits to what it can do. But to return to the point, to return to what I was saying, the Trudeau says that India is killing people in Canada. is quite false. Canadians are killing Canadians in Canada. Indians aren't. Indian IPS officers, that means Indian Police Service officers, Indian intelligence officers, are trying to find out about the relationship between particular Canadian gangsters who may have been terrorists or not. They're trying to find out about the Triads. That's what's interesting. The Triads are, basically there was a time when the Punjabi Mafia in in Canada, it was relying on its networks with the Pakistanis and the Afghans and so on. But that changed. That changed. They had to move towards Bangkok and so forth. You know, the world of drugs and trafficking changes. In a manner which is a little bit unpredictable. Now, the Canadian Sikh, and when I say Sikh, they're not really Sikh. A guy who's clean shaven and who goes around killing people is not a Sikh. He's Hindu. You have to be wearing a turban and not killing people to be a Sikh. I can go to Gurdwara, doesn't mean I'm a Sikh. So it is quite misleading, And the further point I would make is that Trudeau showing that his strings are being pulled by a minority member of his coalition, that means Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh was barred from India by Manmohan Singh in 2013, and okay. And that's great for Jagmeet, provided he can actually deliver. If he can twist Trudeau's arm and say, create money magic, make magic money tree, create the type of health and dental for the teeth and for the eyes, and oh yeah, by the way, I want a hair transplant. If he can get it, Jagmeet is gonna go all the way to the top. But if he doesn't get it, and if he and Trudeau go down because Five Eyes says, well, you gave us a sexed up dossier of shit, and the conservative people in Canada, if they say, we want to look at this evidence, and the moment it goes under legislative scrutiny, the thing becomes justiciable, and then you find out that Jagmeet and his merry band of that he's in bed with all sorts of crime families, and that crime families control a lot of gurdwaras. Sikhs are only 2% of Canadian population. They're 2% of India's population. But in India, except in Punjab, in any other part of India, Sikhs are considered decent, educated, hardworking. In America, Sikhs are seen as Nikki Haley. That's Sikhism. But in Canada, they are gangsters. They are rubbish people involved in a fucking fantasy. Just like Trudeau. Now, Trudeau, it must be said, his father was sponsoring all this terrorism against India, but that was in the 80s when India was allied with Soviet Union. Now, he's just a silly, you're a silly boy. He's a silly boy, isn't he? And I could say more on this topic, except I've decided that I'm a homosexual and I want to masturbate because the very word Justin Tudeau makes my nipples hard. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, this may belong to a different sort of video.